listening to the Marketing Happy Hour podcast, where we discuss career and industry insights with our peers in marketing.
We're here to talk about it all, like the ups and downs of working in social media,
how to build authentic relationships in the influencer and PR space,
managing a 9-to-5 and a side hustle at the same time,
how to be productive in your life and career without losing your sanity, and more.
Ultimately, we're here to build a community with you because we're all trying to navigate the world of marketing together.
Are you ready? Grab your favorite drink and join your hosts, Cassie and Erica, for this week's episode. Hey, Marketing Happy Hour listeners, welcome back. Okay, so we've all heard the buzz around AI and ChatGPT, but what do we actually need to know about it in order to utilize it as a tool to help us in our everyday tasks? Well, we're excited to welcome AI and ChatGPT expert Elise Victor to the podcast today to share her best tips around AI and how it can be an incredible addition to your content creation strategy. You'll definitely want to grab a pen and paper or open your notes app as you tune in. So definitely do that. Grab your favorite drink and learn with us.
Elise, welcome to Marketing Happy Hour. Thanks so much for being here. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. We were just talking off record. AI, ChatGPT they're topics that we wanted to cover for quite some time. And I actually stumbled upon your posts from a friend who commented on one of your posts, and I have enjoyed following your content so far. So super excited to hear about your experience in that world and just dive into the world of AI for the first time really on the show.
Great. Well, I'm excited. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, we have to kick off first with a very important question. Elise, what is in your glass right now, or what do you enjoy sipping on, whether alcoholic or non-alcoholic, just any time of the day?
Sure. So I have a water, and then I also have, I've been kind of dabbling in tequila, and there's a tequila that's kind of like a Bailey's. It's called 1921. And so it's not super strong. It's more if you have like a sweet craving and just want a little bit of something. And so I have that since it's not too late in the day. So I can have a little bit of that, some water, and it's delicious. If you haven't tried it, 1921.
Oh my gosh. I have not heard of that. Erica, I'm curious if you have, but I'm pretty simple right now. I was a little bit under the weather last week, so I just finished a tea, but I have water, a big glass of water as well. So pretty basic. But what about you, Erica?
Yeah, I just have my trusty little Stanley cup full of water. I feel like I'm hydrating so well these days now that I have that though. But I also have a glass of bread and butter, I think is the brand, Chardonnay. I don't know if I'll dabble too much into that right now as we're recording, but probably right after. Cassie and I have like a planning meeting right after, so I'll probably sip on it then. But very, very excited just to echo Cassie here to talk all things AI. Let's just dive right in. When did you start in the whole world of AI? Tell us about your journey there.
Yeah, so I'll kind of go back a little bit to give you the bigger picture. My undergraduate major was in marketing. So I have a bachelor's degree in business, and I was really on a marketing track. I started out working for Universal Studios in their marketing department, kind of pivoted over to finance. And then I had several kind of consulting jobs. I worked for an investment bank. And fun fact, the hedge fund I worked for in New York is actually, if you've seen the Anna Delvey Netflix.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So it was the one that she couldn't scam out of the $20 million or whatever.
No.
So I worked for the
Wow.
CFO of that company.
Oh my gosh.
And then after kind of a long stint in finance, I decided I wanted to go back to school and went into a healthcare career. So I got a master's in healthcare administration and went and worked for several insurance companies. So kind of on the insurance side. And then I went to the provider side and did some consulting. After that, I'm also a mom. So I have my youngest child. When I had him, I couldn't do the travel anymore. And I thought I wanted to go back to school. And so that's when I went back and started my doctoral studies. And through that, I started teaching. And it was about in 2020, I took some courses that were related to AI and really started to just find out how interesting AI was. I became board certified in AI in medicine. So really had a healthcare AI focus, but more in the startup space because I've had a lot of business background. So that's really where my interest in AI started. And then it kind of just exploded with ChatGPT. I'd always had an interest, and it wasn't so much focused in generative AI. But once this came along, I haven't always been very active as far as posting on social media and really amplifying my voice in that way. But I started to do that, and so that's kind of how I came across meeting the two of you. And yeah, I've just kind of fallen in love with sort of all aspects of it. And then thinking about how I can apply it, not just in healthcare, but also in business and in education. I'm still teaching. I teach at the University of North Texas part-time. So there's just so many different areas where AI can be applied. And so I'm just kind of on this AI journey at this point.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, I definitely see your background in marketing poking through, and especially education too, because you have certainly established a wonderful thought leadership on the topic on LinkedIn. So again, like you mentioned, that's where we found you, and just really great educational content on there, but also very visually appealing, and it really draws you in. So you've done a fantastic job there so far, and thank you for sharing your journey with us. It's very impressive to hear about all of that. But want to quickly acknowledge the elephant in the room. I know there's a lot of people who are embracing ChatGPT and AI with open arms, and they're very excited about using it, implementing it into their roles and just the brands that they're building. But there's other people who are very cautious, and they're like, is this going to take over my role? Am I going to be out of job in 6 months? And so, speaking to not only the marketing industry, but just jobs as a whole, where do you see that going with the world of AI? Do you feel like jobs are at risk, or how would you kind of acknowledge that simple struggle or fear that some people are facing right now?
I don't think it's an unreasonable fear, but the way I like to see it is that we'll see the jobs transform. Some things I do think will become obsolete, but I think we're really gearing up for more of a transformation, and we'll see that a lot in marketing. And it's really going to be gaining efficiencies. It's automation. It's understanding where maybe less time can be spent on certain things where chat gpt, or whether it's chat gpt or some other AI tool, can do that. And the people that are in those roles can then focus more on the critical thinking tasks and the strategy behind it. Because even if, for example, you have chat gpt can create a piece of content, and it can happen much faster than maybe a person would have written it, there's still a need to obviously go through that content and also to plug that into a broader strategy where that's got to be developed or vetted at the very least by the people that are in those roles. So I think rather than a takeover, I see it more as a transformation, and it's the people in those roles learning how to use the tools, how it will apply, where the weaknesses are, and filling that in with their expertise.
Yeah, that's really great. I know I personally am not in a corporate role anymore, but being on the business ownership side, I've found that it's really saved me a ton of time, like you mentioned, with a lot of that foundational planning for campaigns, or writing website copy, writing blog posts. So whereas maybe traditionally it would take me, 3 hours to create a piece of content, it's now taking me an hour because I'm cutting down on that front load process. So that's been really exciting for me. But that kind of goes into my next question for you, specifically thinking about marketing, content creation. What are some ways that you feel like marketers can use ChatGPT? And would love to also just hear from your experience building your brand on LinkedIn, how you've used that for creating your content when speaking to those AI platforms.
Sure. So I think, obviously ChatGPT, it's a language model. It's going to excel at, a lot of those language tasks, given the data that it was trained on. So that's, writing the blog posts, or at least outlining coming up with, brainstorming, using that for idea generation, even product descriptions, things that are even kind of those more mundane and, like a product description. It's not using a whole lot of, I guess, the type of creative fuel that you would necessarily use when you're creating a blog, website content, social media, posts, emails. I mean, there's just, I feel like a number of things where you could do. And once you get into the automation piece, if you think about how you can use the automated, some of the automated tools that would link to ChatGPT to respond. So for example, social media posts, you don't have to go in and answer every comment. Maybe you are able to automate that aspect of it. So I would say, writing copy. Also, I think people don't necessarily, people know this, but maybe aren't tapping into it or really thinking about how they could use the language translation piece. ChatGPT is very good at translating many different languages. So that tool, you can competitive analysis. And, I do want to always mention that ChatGPT does get things wrong. It is always important to fact check. But on the whole, with generating content and that type of thing, I mean, it's very strong at doing so. I want to make sure that people know, just because it comes out of ChatGPT doesn't mean that it's fact, and that requires that keen marketing eye and that experience to know too. And I will say I experience this and deal with this with students when they write and they use ChatGPT. You'll have students that aren't very proficient in writing. So they think that everything that comes out, they can't critique it because it just looks wonderful to them. And so if you're not astute in kind of that space, you aren't able to distinguish between what, may or may not be strong in terms of the output that you're getting. And that, also helps you form, and kind of iterate in terms of what you're asking ChatGPT to give you. So I think part of that marketing expertise, and that's important to, really point that out, is knowing what to ask for and knowing if what you're getting is good. And if it isn't, how to go back and get the right information or the good content.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I am not experienced at all with ChatGPT in any capacity. I think I looked at it for 3 minutes one day and asked it some silly question and wanted to see what it said. And other than that, I haven't used it at all. So it's interesting because Cassie uses it all the time with her clients and with her own personal, pieces she's writing for our website and just for her personal social media. So it's just really interesting to see, from my perspective, I don't, have a lot of experience and Cassie does, and you are basically an expert in the area. So it's definitely interesting to me. One of the big questions that I have when it comes to content creation from, ChatGPT in general is, how do you ensure that you're not plagiarizing anyone else? Because it is drawing from all of these different, from my understanding, it's drawing from all of these different sources on the internet. How does that managed?
So ChatGPT, it's not likely that you're going to get output that is plagiarized. It is generating really new content for you, and that is based on all of the vast training data, and so it's putting together sort of new words. We kind of argue semantics sometimes in education, where if a student's turning in an essay that's written by ChatGPT and they don't credit ChatGPT for it, I mean, technically that falls under the umbrella of plagiarism, right? Because you're not crediting the source. But in marketing and sort of in the rest of the world, that's a little gray. Sure. But if you're referring to just, you want to make sure that this entire paragraph is not taken from, someone else's paragraph that's on the internet, and it can happen, more rare, but inadvertently, ChatGPT, something could happen. It would be a good idea to run the content through, maybe a plagiarism checker, depending Sure. also on what parameters people are working in. They may want to have their AI written content appear lower than it actually is. So, given, whatever, like I said, their parameters are, I'm not suggesting people, try to pass off AI content as their own or not, but I know there's some things when it comes to SEO that people are concerned about, there are really good AI detectors out there. Originality AI is specifically intended for kind of marketing and copywriting. So that is one tool. I will preface that by saying they just recently did an update. And what's happening is that even with human written content, it's so sensitive that it's flagging. I'd put in something that I wrote and it said it came back at 17% AI, and I wrote it 10 years ago. So I was just testing it. And that's with their new update. So you just have to be careful. But I would say if people are concerned about that, that is probably the best tool that I've tried. And I've tried a handful of them.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for that. That's been on my mind since day one. I heard about ChatGPT. I was like, how do you know that it's not just like taking other people's information and then like you're putting it out as your own? So I really appreciate that. That's a great tip there. And one of the posts that we saw on your LinkedIn page kind of caught our attention. That was how to master ChatGPT fast. A lot of marketers are using the tool to create content and brainstorm for campaigns, but many aren't using it correctly. And even from my perspective, I haven't used it at all yet. So curious to hear your perspective on the key to, effectively using that platform.
Yeah. So I think the key to understanding or to using ChatGPT effectively is to have clear goals going into it. So I know even myself, when I was first using it, you just put in kind of some questions, like you said, and see what the output is. But if you step back and think about, what your goals are in terms of using ChatGPT and have that drive your prompts. And so your prompt is going to be like your query or your question that you put into ChatGPT. The more detailed that can be, the more context that you can give ChatGPT, the better your output. So it's like garbage in, garbage out. And it's really the same concept with this. So you have to be very specific with ChatGPT, because if not, it won't narrow the universe of kind of potential output that you get to sort of the scope of what you want to work in. So for example, if you just, put in a kind of a generic prompt, it will pick the context for you. And actually this is a little bit more technical than you probably need to know, but it will essentially assign the context. So if you say, but I'm a marketer, so act as a marketing expert, and we're providing, we are creating a blog post for X, Y, and Z that will be used in this context to target this specific audience, right? So all of that specificity will lead to a very clear and output that you would be looking for. Now, the one thing that I would say is a really important tip: when you get that output from ChatGPT, you don't want to just accept that for what it is. You will want to go back and iterate, because ChatGPT will give you better output if you ask for it. So you read through the response and say, well, I feel like we're not as strong here in this particular area, or you maybe didn't address all of the concerns that would exist from this group of people. So how could we do that better? And I find that if you do that, 2 or 3 times, you end up with a much better response. And some of it's, it's trial and error, but it's essentially learning how to prompt. And it's not that complicated or complex. It's, in the post, I think that you saw, I broke it down to just say like who, what, when, where, why, and how, right? Though if you're thinking about those kind of 5 things, 6, I guess, with the how, and developing your prompts based on that, you're going to get much better output than, create a blog post for me about, cats or whatever, which is what I think the trap that some people fall into is like, they don't know, and they just have this interface and what looks like a search bar. And so they're not sure what to do with it. So you can really harness the power of it if you're very clear.
That's great. Thank you for that. Do you have any tips too about, I know there's a couple different ways to train the tool, and someone said, I can't remember where I found this, but someone said teaching it like an assistant. So when you first start using it, it doesn't quite understand who you are, what you do, your tone of voice. But over time it learns as the more and more that you use it and interact with it. So For marketing, a lot of these different brands obviously have their own brand voice and the way that they write, the style or the tone. Any tips on training ChatGPT how to speak in your tone, while also keeping in mind that that's something that you may need to edit and tweak afterwards, but hopefully getting it a little bit more on point for a final output that you'd hope to use for a blog or social media content?
Yeah. So one of the things as far as training chat GPTs, okay, let me back up. A lot of people kind of have the misconception that once they start interacting with chat GPT, that it kind of knows them from that point on. And all of those conversations are sort of in chat GPT's memory. So if let's say you have 10 conversations open on your left and they're all different topics, ChatGPT, the way that it's set up right now, and for most users that are interfacing with it in the chat mode, that is not going to remember the context of all of those conversations. So it has only the capacity, if depending on whether you're using GPT-3 or 4, of maybe 3,000 to 6,000 words. So what that means is if you have, a conversation from 3 weeks ago about writing, doing a brand campaign or something, and then you've had a bunch of subsequent conversations that have exceeded those words, when you go back to that, you're going to have to prime it again. So that's an important thing, because I think a lot of people are using it and they're like, oh, I'm going to go back to my old conversation and it's going to remember that we talked about this campaign. I'm just going to ask a question. It actually isn't. So if you think of it as kind of this one brain and it only has the capacity to remember that, the certain amount of words. So the key to that is that you can save or keep your prompts to prime it. So if you're going to go back to the conversation about the campaign, maybe pull, the necessary points about that and do a refresh of, that conversation. And then you ask the questions. Otherwise, it's not going to have the context and you might, mistakenly think that it does. So I think that's the key thing. And with that, I keep my prompts in Notion, although I have them, previously in ChatGPT. But the priming thing, if I know I'm going to go back and talk about, X or Y topic, and I just need to put that in there, I have it all saved in Notion, and I can just copy and paste it back into ChatGPT.
Awesome, Elise. Thanks so much for all of your advice so far. And you talked a little bit about, the differences between ChatGPT and GPT-4, which I guess one has more capability of memory than the other. What are some other, differences between the two? And should we be utilizing both, or is one better than the other, you would say?
Yeah. So ChatGPT is OpenAI's chat interface. So that is essentially when you go to chat.openai.com, you're using and you're communicating back and forth. ChatGPT, there's a 3.5 and a 4. Now, those are both built on the GPT architecture. And so there's the chat interface that people are generally familiar with. And then you can also have your account can access the API, which we can call the backend. And that's really what ChatGPT is built on. And that's where developers can also build their other AI tools using the GPT architecture and infrastructure. So as a user, you can actually go and access that. GPT-4, though, there is a wait list currently. So I'll explain the distinction between the two. So GPT-3 is almost 2 years old, and it is actually 3.5 now. And then the GPT-4 just came out. They're both, very strong language models. Their information, I also should have probably pointed this out earlier too. It ends as a cutoff date of September 2021. So it is not going to have current data unless you're using maybe a browser extension or you have a plugin or something. But essentially, the information in ChatGPT or GPT 3.5 or 4 ends at September 2021. So it's just important to know that. And essentially, if you're using, so the ChatGPT interface You have a limitation, like I said, of as far as its memory or tokens, it's referred to about 3,000 words. GPT-4 is 4,000 words. The output, if you do a side-by-side comparison, it's much more robust in terms of, what you get, the depth of information, how, the context, the understanding, the sentences that are put together in GPT-4 versus 3.5. So if you can get access to GPT-4, that I would highly recommend that as a marketer. You would be paying the $20 a month. So they call that ChatGPT Plus, and you have access to that. Now, if you want access to GPT-4, like the developers have, and I have that, I'm not a developer, but I use the backend because it allows you to, so first of all, in order to have access, it's free. But once you have access, there's this area back there called the playground. And I know it sounds complicated, but if you log in and do it, it really isn't complicated. It's just maybe, the first time you get in there, it's a little different. You can control some of the things like the randomness in terms of the language output. There are different controls that you have in as far as, what you get in output. And sometimes it's more beneficial if you're creating a longer piece of content to use the GPT kind of one-off back end versus the chat interface. That is more designed for like a back and forth dialogue if you're having. And so, there's benefits to both, but you can customize your output more if you do get familiar with the back end, so you can kind of manipulate what you get out of the model.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for that. And you mentioned this, but all of this topic as a whole can get overwhelming, especially as a first timer and not ever using it before. So do you have any just basic tips for getting started? Let's say, so for Erica, for example, if Erica wants to get started today, where do you recommend that people begin? How would you recommend using it for a first timer as you get in there and really start getting more and more advanced with it?
I would say definitely start with the chat interface, and that is with the 3.5. It's free. You can sign up and just start using it with and creating, more detailed prompts and comparing what the output is. And, once you get really familiar with that, and if you, put yourself on the wait list for ChatGPT, for ChatGPT Plus, and, once you get access to that, you can use that. But I say starting out, just use the free, ChatGPT 3.5, get familiar. And I would say learn the prompting, understand sort of the context of what you're putting in and compare the output and kind of really understanding what it can do for you. And then from there, as you evolve and, get more familiar and comfortable with it. And it's not, I don't want to make it sound like it's this big machine and it's very, very hard. It's just, it's just different. Then I'd say consider, getting access to the API, using that. To do that, it is free, but you are charged, per word is essentially what it comes out to. It's not super expensive, but it is different. And in addition to that $20 if you are paying for ChatGPT 4.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And I know we bounced around a couple other platforms during this discussion, but any other specific AI platforms that you recommend marketers or creative professionals using on a regular basis? I know there's a lot of image creation tools. Canva, I know, has AI built into it now. So anything else you'd recommend us looking into?
Yeah, I mean, Canva, of course, I know a lot of marketers have access to other tools that kind of are Adobe and probably far better than maybe what you could do in Canva. I don't know. Canva might give you a run for your money though. I used Canva this morning, and you can actually go in and add a feature where you can upload your own image, or they have stock avatars, and you can give it a script as AI and it will speak in a presentation. So it's really cool. I actually have a TikTok that I put like a lot of snippets on of, just how to do stuff. So I created that video this morning, and it's really cool. I had an AI generated image of my husband. So it wasn't even him. And then I gave him a script and it has him speaking as like his AI avatar. That was all in Canva, which is like, it's crazy that you can think Canva can do that. And they also have text to image. I don't, as a marketer, I would highly recommend getting familiar with Midjourney. If the only thing is it's not as user friendly. I mean, if you have a Discord already and you're using that, but you do have to go through Discord. So if you go to Midjourney, then you get in the Discord, but you can create, I'm sure you've seen like was like the Pope, all those images, and like had Trump and all the things that were like so realistic, these hyper realistic images, but it's incredible. And if you can just go in there, I mean, I think as a marketer, you should be familiar with that and understanding like how you can just put words in and generate actual lifelike looking pictures. And people are using that. You can use that in your content, at least the Midjourney output. And you probably have to check, user agreements and things for different generative AI, as far as images. But I do know that. So I'd highly recommend that. I think a lot of marketers are familiar with Jasper as far as creating content. If people haven't heard of Claude, that is another language model that was created by Anthropic. So I think right now I've tried it. It's not as it's not as good as ChatGPT, but you have to go through Slack to try it. I've tried Google Bard. I've tried the Bing chat. Again, nothing has impressed me like ChatGPT, but I see a ton of potential in Google. I was pretty disappointed when I first tried it and when they launched a little over a month ago, I think it was. But in just 3 weeks, they have languages now. It's much better. So I think Google can probably, put out something really great. They're working hard. I definitely would say, to try that tool out. Zapier, I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but as far as the automation end, you can pretty much automate anything with that. Let's see. And then the Originality AI, I had mentioned that as far as the AI detection. So that is definitely one that I would say marketers should be familiar with.
Awesome. Awesome. And I know all of these details and these platforms are changing on a daily basis. So really curious to see where the future is with this. But as we close out our conversation on AI, and this has been so incredibly helpful, any other need to knows, tips, insights that you can share with us just for using these platforms for internal, development, internal content, internal brainstorming, or external content or anything that's being published out on the internet?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing to remember is you're not going to want to put proprietary or personal information into any of the AI tools. We are still kind of in the Wild West when it comes to a lot of AI tools that are built on GPT-3 and 4. So, almost anyone can create an AI tool, right? So you're going to really want to look and understand, maybe who's behind it before you just start putting information in. Or if it's just something benign and you're testing it out, that's fine, but you really want to be careful. And if you are working for an organization, you're not going to want to, and especially in the area of brand, brand marketing, things like that, just be cognizant of what you're putting into any AI tool and even ChatGPT, because, we've seen in the media recently, like security it's a big issue, and big companies are not going to want their proprietary stuff being put into any language model. So I just say be careful of that. If you're using it for your resume, same thing. I mean, put the content in, but maybe like crop out don't include your address, your phone number, and all of that stuff. And just be mindful of that as you're using any AI tool.
Yeah, absolutely. That's another concern that, I have as someone who hasn't really been using it, is brand safety, especially when it comes to using it for a brand. So yeah, that's super interesting. And I can see how you can use it without, giving away that proprietary information. It's kind of just like a tool to help you brainstorm and to help you, partner alongside that tool and then create the content from there. So definitely agree with you there. Well, this has been super awesome. We just love to ask this question to close out the show. What do you know now that you wish you knew early on in your career?
Gosh. Well, I would say I wish that I knew everything would work out. And I do think that I think when you're younger or early on in your career, I think you put a lot of emphasis on sort of where you are and what you're doing, and maybe don't always try out new things or are willing to take the risks if you're interested in kind of a different area. And I say I wish I had taken more risks or done more things that I would have wanted to do earlier on in my career. I remember when I was 26 and I was like, oh, I'm just too old to do this. And you're not. And you think that. And I think when you're young, you think that. And oh, you just have nothing but time. I mean, just if there's something that's of interest to you and you really want to explore it, I would encourage people to do that. And I wish I would have done that with other things than kind of boxing myself in and saying, oh, I'm too old to do this. And then I look back and I was like, I was so young. I could have done all of these things. And, that would be my advice.
Yeah, that's a really good tip. I know I've certainly fallen into that myself, and it's good just to look back on all these different unique experiences and know that they're all adding to your future and what you're building in the future, whether that's your own business and corporate or what have you. And so thank you for that. That's always a great reminder. Well, Elise, this has been fantastic as well. Thank you so much for all of your insights. Certainly learned a lot, and I'm excited to get back into ChatGPT and these other platforms and continue to play around. But where can everyone follow along with you and everything that you're doing? I know we talked a lot about LinkedIn. You have a great presence there. So just tell us where all we can connect with you.
Anybody can find me at elisevictor.com. So it's spelled ELISE and then VICTOR.com. And from there, they can find all my social links. I have actually a beginner's guide to how to prompt too. So it's if you go to the downloads tab, and that will walk you through not only just, getting to OpenAI, signing up for an account, and then gives you some initial prompts and how to get started. So like if it's zero, you've never touched it before, that's a really good tool. And even if you've used it, but maybe not maximized, that's helpful. And that's just a free, PDF download for anybody.
Oh, fantastic. We'll certainly include that in the show notes below. But Elise, thank you so much again. We're excited to continue to stay in touch with you and just watch as, again, these platforms evolve and change, what you have to share on them and all of your best practices. But thank you for joining us and sharing our first conversation on AI here on Marketing Happy Hour.
Great. Well, thank you for having me.
That is all for this week's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode with Elise, please remember to subscribe, rate, and leave a review on your favorite listening platform. For more Marketing Happy Hour goodies, head over to our website at marketinghappyhr.com or follow us on Instagram at marketinghappyhr. Catch you next week. We are so excited to share that our first ever free Marketing Happy Hour digital resource is now available. Download the Dream Career Game Plan today at marketinghappyhr.com/freebie. That's marketinghappyhr.com/freebie. This 5-step workbook will guide you through defining your goals, building your network, diversifying your skills, influencing where you're at, and investing in your growth. Cassie and I created this resource with marketing careers in mind, but the framework can be applied to any industry. Our hope is that this workbook will help you truly elevate your career, whether you're in the market for a new position or just looking to make your mark in your current organization. No matter where this resource finds you, we are cheering you on every step of the way. So go check it out at marketinghappyhr.com/freebie to download and make your career dreams come true.